It's been 84 years.
Rand, I need another episode of Fully Cinematic.
While most of James Cameron's hit movies have been beaten beyond death with unnecessary sequels, one in particular hasn't been turned into a decade-spanning franchise, at least not yet anyway. Titanic sailing back with a shiny new 4K HDR high frame rate edition to celebrate its 25th anniversary, a couple months late. So pack a life vest, update your life insurance policy, dress warm, and kiss your goodbye as we take one last trip aboard Titanic. And oh yeah, there will be spoilers. The festivities kick off with the framing device of a 1996 treasure hunting crew led by frequent Cameron collaborator, the late Bill Paxton, exploring the shipwreck of the vessel in question on the ocean floor. Using a submersible robot to explore the ruins, Paxton's Brock Lovin and company discover a safe in one of the cabins. But cracking it open aboard their ship, the academic Nislav Keldysh reveals nothing but a sketch of a woman dated April 14, 1912, the day that the ocean liner sank. 100-year-old Rose Dawson Calvert, watching a news report about the discovery, recognizes the drawing and calls Brock to tell him so. The crew brings Rose, along with her granddaughter, on board, hoping she can supply info on the heart of the ocean, a mega valuable diamond once owned by Louis XVI. The old lady is triggered by an animated depiction of the disaster that causes her memories of the ill-fated voyage to flood to the surface. Privileged 17-year-old Philadelphian Rose DeWitt Bukater boarded the so-called Ship of Dreams in Southampton, England, with her socialite mother and wealthy fiancé, Caledon Hockley, describing it as a slave ship. Not long after, Wisconsin-born itinerant artist Jack Dawson and his best friend, Italian immigrant Fabrizio, barely make it in time after winning their tickets in a poker game. A little exploring takes them to the foremost point of the bow, where Jack climbs the railing and utters his dumb catchphrase, "I'm the king of the world." At lunch in the first-class dining hall, Rose's group meets the ship's real-life builder, Thomas Andrews, J. Bruce Ismay, managing director of White Star Line, the shipping company to which the boat belonged, and Margaret Molly Brown, who will go on to become one of the most famous survivors. That night, Jack and Rose meet when he talks Sir Braddock out of jumping overboard. Although convinced by Jack's rationale, Rose slips climbing back onto the deck and has to be pulled up. However, ship security mistakes his actions and arrests him. When Rose straightens everything out with a quick lie, Cal replays Jack by inviting him to dinner. Back in their cabin, we're introduced to the missing gemstone when Cal gifts it to his fiancée. The following day, Jack and Rose bond as she prattles on about her rich girl blues. After she pretends to want to storm off, Jack shows Rose his portfolio. Elsewhere, Ismay pressures Captain Edward John Smith to increase his speed so as to impress the press corps by making an early arrival. Meanwhile, Jack and Rose's quality time is interrupted by the appearance of Rose's mother, Ruth, and her snobbish cronies. Fortunately for him, a quick-thinking Molly had the foresight to ask if Jack had suitable dinner attire. He doesn't, of course, so she loans him a tux. That evening, Molly introduces Jack to John Jacob Astor IV, real estate tycoon and the richest man on board. After the stuffy dinner with the upper crust, Jack introduces her to his people in steerage, where they exuberantly dance an Irish jig. The following day, Cal reveals his awareness of Rose's whereabouts the night before and demands that she comport herself in a more appropriate fashion. Ruth repeats this sentiment when she speaks to her daughter. Cal's minion, Spicer Lovejoy, prevents Jack from speaking to Rose the following day. But he meets with her in secret anyway in an attempt to convince her to liberate herself from the life about which she constantly complains. She rejects his advice, momentarily. After tracking the young artist to the bow, Rose and Jack share a first kiss as a version of Celine Dion's chart-topping song, "My Heart Will Go On," plays in the background. That evening, Rose brings Jack to her stateroom so that he can draw her portrait, in her words, like one of your French girls. She wears nothing but the heart of the ocean while she poses, with an instrumental version of Celine's song playing in the background yet again. Afterwards, they have to haul from Lovejoy when he notices the pair leaving the room together. After making their way to the cargo hold, Jack gives Rose the business in the back of a Renault Town car. Classy. When Cal inspects his safe, he finds that Rose has left her portrait inside, along with the necklace and a sarcastic breakup note. Meanwhile, a couple of hands in the crow's nest spot an iceberg ahead and sound the alarm, leading the engine room and navigational crews to take evasive action. But the increased speed combined with the vessel's immense size caused it to clip the object nevertheless, opening multiple breaches in the starboard hull. Sealing the compromised decks fails to confine the rapidly incoming seawater.
This should be interesting.
When the new couple returns to warn Rose's family about the collision, Lovejoy plants the diamond on Jack on Cal's orders. He's subsequently arrested and dragged away while Rose gets a slap from Cal.
Are you okay, ma'am?
Elsewhere, Andrews informs the captain that sinking is no longer a matter of if, but when. He later warns Rose personally. Meanwhile, Jack is cuffed to a pipe by the master-at-arms and placed under guard by Lovejoy. Up on deck, the crew distributes life jackets to the passengers, and the orchestra begins to play in an attempt to keep everyone calm. Captain Smith is informed that a rescue vessel will take 4 hours to arrive. And disgusted by Ruth's disregard for the lives of the poorer passengers, for whom there aren't enough lifeboats, Rose races off to find Jack, whom even Lovejoy has abandoned, after punching him in the stomach. Andrew directs Rose as wishy-washy to Jack's location, E-Deck, where she discovers that the entire deck is flooded. Upon finding him, Rose apologizes for doubting his integrity. And after finding neither the key to the restraints nor anyone willing to help, Rose breaks her man free using a fire axe, which is made even more amazing by the fact that she closed her eyes before taking the swing. Misery and Ruth, who departed on one of the first boats, watch the slowly submerging sea hotel from a distance, as Cal and Lovejoy search for the lovebirds. Speaking of which, they meet up with Fabrizio on his and Jack's now locked steerage deck before breaking through the gate. Up top, panic spreads as Cal brokers a deal with First Officer William Murdoch for a spot on the boat, which is seating women and children first. Choosing vengeance over salvation in a freshly bought seat, Cal heads off after his ex, as Ismay slips onto a lifeboat full of kids and women. When Cal finds them, Jack coaxes Rose onto a boat by backing the cuckold's lie that he made an arrangement for both Jack and himself. However, she jumps ship at the last minute, refusing to leave her dude behind, whom an enraged Cal shoots at with Lovejoy's pistol. Failing to hit his mark while emptying the entire clip, Cal belatedly realizes that Rose now has the diamond, remembering that he placed it in the pocket of the jacket that he placed around her as he helped her onto the boat. After escaping downstairs, the couple finds themselves trapped behind a locked gate on a deck filling with freezing seawater. Using the keys left by a steward, they unlock it at the last moment. On the deck, Officer Murdoch himself out of guilt after Fabrizio's friend Tommy, and Cal sneaks aboard a boat pretending to be the father of a crying child that he finds. Rose bids adieu to Andrews, who's one of the people who declines to escape from a watery, while Captain Smith locks himself on the bridge. Now reaching the upper deck, water violently reaches the bridge, breaking the compartment's glass on the way in. Anarchy ensues as Fabrizio is killed by a falling smokestack. Astor is dropped in the ballroom, and the ship begins to capsize vertically. Several passengers race to the stern, which is rapidly rising. The electricity shorts out just before the ship cracks in half, and the stern sticks straight up in the air. Jack and Rose cling to the rail of the spot where they first met, as several people lose their grip and plunge into the icy drink. The Wolf of Wall Street instructs Rose to jump just before the stern is submerged so that they won't be pulled under. Finding the floating door, they climb on until the aviator determines that it can only support one person's weight. He treads the frigid water as the head crewman aboard Ruth's lifeboat refuses to return for fear of becoming overwhelmed by survivors. Realizing the futility of their situation, Rose confesses her love to the man in the iron mask, but he dissuades her from saying goodbye and makes her promises not to give up, as his hypothermia sets in. A returning lifeboat, captained by Ian Gruffo, searches for survivors among floating. Meanwhile, Rose realizes that Gatsby, who's still holding her hand, has frozen to death and dislodges his remains before weakly calling out to the boat to alert them that she's alive. Unable to make herself heard, she swims to the nearby body of a crewman with a whistle, using it to attract their attention. 6 people, including Rose, out of 1,500 who went into the water, were saved by the sole boat that returned. Later on a rescue ship, the RMS Carpathia, Cal walks past Rose as he searches for her in vain. When the crewman asks her name, she responds, Rose Dawson. Old Rose reveals that Cal married, but she read that he shot himself after the 1929 stock market crash. Brock admits to Rose's granddaughter that 3 years of studying Titanic failed to move him until now. Standing on the railing of the research vessel, Rose drops the diamond into the sea. Her bedside pictures illustrate a full life, including her acting career, as she envisions herself reuniting with the people who died that night, including Jack, who kisses her on the grand staircase. And Celine Dion belts out "My Heart Will Go On" one last time. This derivative, sappy, uber-bland remix of Romeo and Juliet is brimming with cliched, uninteresting character types and drags on for more than 3 hours. It's no accident that Jack and Rose's initials are the reverse of Shakespeare's legendary couple. So what's not to like? A significant portion of the ticket sales were due to repeat viewings by moviegoers obsessed with cheesy romance and the then slim Leonardo DiCaprio. The film's highest grossing single day of release even took place on Valentine's Day of 1998, which was nearly 2 months after its debut. But for audience members who didn't happen to be tween girls, nothing worthwhile takes place until about 90 minutes in, when the boat starts sinking. That depiction of the ship dying slow death and the passengers and crew's reaction to it are some of the few highlights of the movie. There are multiple compelling documentaries about the Titanic's one and only voyage, but nothing brings a tragedy home like actually watching it happen. It was also a nice and pretty ballsy touch to have the main antagonist, Cal, survive the disaster. Titanic marks the third time in Cameron's career-long obsession with aquatics that his cast would get waterlogged, but it wouldn't be the last. At the time, Leo was a rising star and critical darling, mostly because of a stretch on the Growing Pains sitcom, supporting roles in the films What's Eating Gilbert Grape and The Quick and the Dead, and starring roles in The Basketball Diaries and an update of What Else? Romeo and Juliet. That last one established him as a heartthrob in the eyes of tween and teen girls. Plus, it was good practice for the role that made him a global superstar. James Cameron recently made it known that DiCaprio mistakenly expected to be cast in the film without auditioning. That story makes Leonardo sound like a hoe, but his attitude is understandable, considering the fact that he's just demonstrated that he could pull off a scrawny, young, hopeless romantic who gives up his for love like a dummy. Romeo and Juliet hadn't been released when Leo met his future director, but word gets around in Hollywood. Maybe his attitude was fueled by the knowledge that Cameron's reported first pick to portray Jack, River Phoenix, would never be available due to his untimely passing. The movie's $200 million budget made it the most expensive film ever made at the time, and that gamble paid off when it passed Jurassic Park to become the highest grossing movie in history, as well as becoming the first to exceed more than $1 billion in ticket sales. That first record would stand for a little over 12 years when it was topped by another Cameron flick, Avatar. But Avatar remained at #1 for 7 weekends of release to Titanic's 15. It also somehow managed to snag a record-tying 14 Oscar nominations, winning 11, which ties another record. Titanic's current $2.18 billion gross puts it in the #3 spot on the all-time highest box office list. But none of that is proof of quality. And the main thing that the remastered edition adds is Atmos sound, which wasn't available during the film's initial run. There are no re-added deleted scenes or Easter eggs. Titanic's only second to Gone with the Wind on the most overrated movies of all time list. If you really want to see a star-crossed love story aboard an infamous ship on the high seas, skip this trash and check out Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl instead. But I've had enough of this conversation and this movie, so I'm logging off.
Fully cinematic.
It's been 8